2016 started with a good deal of troubles, from threats from North Korea, terror threats, Saudi executions, and dire predictions in the stock market from the Financial Times. It was the year North Korea launched 5 nuclear bomb tests in defiance of the world, was accused of maniacal recklessness, and stated its aim to have a bomb that could reach U.S. shores. During 2016, the EU's refugee and migrant crisis peaked. The shocking 1,000 men rape occurred in Cologne, Germany, and it was the year that terror hit Brussels, the capital of Europe. On a happy note, Iran freed Pastor Saeed Abedini. It was also the year of the Brexit vote, one of the biggest events of end-time Bible prophecy. The EU would not retreat after Brexit, but continued its move forward, and with even more renewed fervor. In retaliation, the opt-outs of EU legislation that the UK had been allowed were proposed to be done away with after Brexit, and the EU appointed its most staunch Europhile as a Brexit negotiator. In Bible prophecy, the Brexit can possibly be the fulfillment of Daniel 7:24, which we will not know until the details play out in 2017. As the EU faced many crises in 2016, it called for an EU army. EU Commission President Juncker stated that the EU being a soft power was not enough, as he proposed a military headquarters, and at his State of the Union let it be known an EU-wide defense was on the agenda. The EU approved its first ever military budget in October. Jerry Falwell Jr. shocked evangelicals when he endorsed Donald Trump for president, and thus continued a campaign between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton that was like no other in U.S. history, with violence erupting at Trump rallies and anti-Trump protests. Upon the election of Donald Trump, Rape Melania trended on Twitter, and riots and protests continued for days, evidencing the anger and violence of the times. Even more so, the election of Donald Trump was one of the biggest events for end-time Bible prophecy, because his presidency would cause a geopolitical seismic shift and help thrust the EU forward into political union. After Trump's election, he teamed with former UKIP leader and the man responsible for Brexit, Nigel Farage, and offered to make him the UK ambassador to the US. The Trump presidency became another catalyst for the EU to call for the urgency of its own defense and to build into a political empire. In 2016, EU Parliament President Martin Schulz stepped down to try to run in the German elections being held sometime in September 2017 to run against Angela Merkel. The possibility of his becoming Chancellor of Germany with his political EU mission would be big news for end-time Bible prophecy if he comes to head the helm of the EU's largest member country. He will no doubt take a major role in helping the EU forward on its political path, and Schulz is a good candidate for one of the 10 kings of Revelation and Daniel. 2016 was also the year the EU signed a historic trade deal with Canada, which reduces its reliance on the U.S. as an export market and picks away at another piece of the U.S.'s leading position in the world. 2016 was also the year of a watch on the Italian banks, especially the world's oldest bank, the Monte dei Paschi, and Deutsche Bank. In Israel, 2016 is the year of the Israeli fires and the Arab world celebrating on social media. Iran test fires a missile named Israel must be wiped off the face of the earth. It was also the year that the UN voted and gave preliminary approval to a resolution that denies Jewish ties to the Temple Mount and the Western Wall. On the other hand, it became the year that Donald Trump pledged to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. 2016 is also the year that Turkey and Russia healed their rift, and Putin and Erdogan met for a new beginning in their relations, which lines with the Ezekiel 38 war predictions, and further in line with that forecast, Russia and Turkey hooked up with Iran and sent help to aid in Israel's fires. We also saw Turkey removed further from the EU. It is seeking EU membership. The Turkish coup followed by the crackdown by Erdogan, led to a freeze on EU-Turkey membership and the threat of Erdogan to flood refugees into the EU. And also in line with Ezekiel 38, Russia and Armenia formed a military alliance. In line with further chaos, in 2016 in the China Sea conflict, Beijing told its citizens to prepare for possible war on the South China Sea, with Vietnam moving its rocket launchers in the area. South Korea also fired on Chinese ships. As for the escalation in violence and signs of the times, Greece called on NATO to help halt refugee flow as North Sweden police warned women to stay indoors at night. ISIS continued its atrocities, and in one story it was reported they used a tool called the biter for women who disobeyed their dress code. ISIS also directly threatened Israel and ordered its franchises to kill Christians. The Orlando shooting of 2016 was declared the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history. The Milwaukee riots turned the streets into a war zone. In the U.S., an FBI report revealed that murders went up 10.8% since 1971. Violence against women who ignore catcallers is on the rise. In one story in India, a married woman was groped, and when she refused the advances of the man, he beat her with a large stick in front of a group of onlookers as she struggled to get away. 2016 also became a year where violence against members of the press increased, and we saw varying forms of censorship in several countries. On the sexually immoral front, a huge Norwegian pedophile ring was busted, an 11-year-old male became Britain's youngest male rapist, and Sweden charged 5 in the gang rape of a boy. It seems there were more and more accounts of coaches and clergy who were caught committing countless acts of sexual abuse of young boys and girls. On the social front, a state of emergency was called for in Canada for a community facing a suicide epidemic. 2016 became the year of opioid overdose deaths becoming unprecedented and a #1 cause of death, and obesity's epidemic continued to rise. On the incidents in nature, bald eagles popping up dead in Maryland, sea levels are rising at the fastest rate in 3,000 years, a massive record fish kill was recorded in Florida, the frightening decline of British butterflies, a freak lightning strike that killed over 300 reindeer, California wildfires, bee attacks are becoming more frequent, and a drought struck many states in the U.S. The California drought caused trees to die by millions. In Siberia, the ground bounced like a trampoline, and a gigantic sinkhole swallowed an intersection in a Japanese city. Another major sign is that Arctic sea ice is vanishing far faster than anyone thought possible. To top things off, on November 14th was a supermoon. 2016 earthquakes. Italy was rocked by the strongest quake in 36 years. The Italy earthquake destroyed half of an entire town. A 6.5 quake in California, a 7.8 in the Solomon Islands, and a large quake in Papua New Guinea. 2016 became the year of extreme heat and cold. A heat dome struck the U.S. and a polar vortex struck in the winter. In the Mideast, it was the hottest year on record. April broke temperature records, and the UK prepared for the coldest winter for 5 years because of a polar vortex there. 2016 became the hottest year on record, breaking the record set in 2015, which was the hottest year on record then. So we see again our spike upward, mirroring the birth pangs chart that Jesus predicted. Severe storms. Japan braced for a 3rd typhoon in a week. China was battered by Nida, its most powerful typhoon in 30 years. In October, Florida had a storm that called for mass evacuations, and London flooded after torrential rains in the fall. Plagues. Locusts plagued southern Russia. Zika virus spread, and super lice emerged in every state in the U.S. Leprosy sprang up in the U.S., and in 2016, polio reared its ugly head. There was the development of a technology face recognition app. CRISPR gene editing was tested in a person for the first time, and scientists were able to create a motherless baby. 2016 was an eventful year in end-time Bible prophecy, and tune in for the video that will follow this one, which is my 2017 forecast. In the meantime, for more on end-time Bible prophecy, subscribe to my channel, Prophecy Talk, today.